One of the biggest flops of this 2023 Rugby World Cup involves, without a doubt, the Australian national rugby team, the Wallabies. Controversy started already before the tournament, with some legendary players of the team being left out of the squad by Eddie Jones, seeking for a renovation, eyeing the 2027 Rugby World Cup to be played on home soil. However, this didn't quite go to plan. So, could Eddie Jones be as well a part of a further renovation after the tournament? Do the Wallabies need to look for someone else to take over the role? Let's take a look at the whole Eddie Jones Wallabies drama. Eddie Jones had already been the Wallabies head coach for a few years back in 2001. He coached the team until 2005. He's undoubtedly one of the most highly regarded coaches of international rugby, and therefore the results he has achieved speak for themselves. Even with Australia, back in his first stint, he won the Tri-Nations during his first year and then went on to guide the team to the 2003 World Cup's final. During that tournament, they beat New Zealand in the semi-finals before eventually losing to England in the final match. Not only did he achieve great results with Australia, he was also a technical advisor in the Springboks team that won the Rugby World Cup in 2007 and also reached the final with England in 2019. And those are just the most important. Facts speak for themselves, and based on them, we can say Eddie Jones is no stranger to success in international rugby. So, from the Wallabies' point of view, bringing Eddie Jones back would have never seemed like a bad idea. What's more, on paper, he would seem like the right coach to make that renovation of the team the Australian Rugby Union is after, due to the poor performances the team has had lately. This is part of a greater project that is strengthening Australia's rugby as a whole as its main goal. The Wallabies' recent low standard is just a part of the problem, with a focus on nurturing new young talents and building a strong team for the future. With sights on the 2027 Rugby World Cup to be played in Australia, this year's tournament comes at a difficult moment, right in the middle of the process. One would have thought the right decision in this situation would be to bring in the older team reference and mix them up with the young talents for them to learn from the more experienced, especially if the goal is to build a strong and competitive team that can perform well at these stages. Jones went for a gamble though and left some big names out of the list. These include longtime captain Michael Hooper and legendary fly half Quade Cooper. This move was controversial to say the least. Why expose them to the world in such a way when they are so young and lack the experience, if they can be part of the process with others that have already experienced it? Well, that's none of our business. The fact is that the Wallabies traveled to France with the youngest squad on average at just 26.5 years. This is of course not the ideal situation for Australian rugby, which is, unfortunately, nowhere near where it should be. Just like when things move forward, everything is fine, during these tough times, critics started lining up. Firstly, because of his odd selections. Leaving such important names out of the list can only be done by someone with character. It seemed like an all-or-nothing move. He would even nail it and then be idolized, or fail and then be destroyed. Unfortunately, it is nearer the second one. This is the second aspect for which he is criticized, because the team does not play well. Even if we take into account the matches prior to the Rugby World Cup, Australia played the Rugby Championship, losing all 3 matches, and then lost to France in their final preparation match. Not good at all. Then, they would start their World Cup campaign with a win against Georgia, before potentially losing to Fiji and Wales. The loss to Fiji was especially a hard one to take. During all those matches, something that stood out was the poor discipline. While it is somewhat understandable, given that many of the players were playing their first matches with the team, and nerves definitely take a role, this has a lot to do with the coach and his staff as well, and didn't go unnoticed by the fans. Basically, every time the Wallabies played before the World Cup, expectations were lower and lower, but there was still some hope. But unfortunately, things exploded during the tournament. Despite the poor performances of his team and receiving lots of criticism, Jones still showed his professionalism in one of the toughest situations he has probably ever faced. Firstly, he apologized to all the Australian media and supporters for the tough times, particularly after their loss against Fiji, which was something that nobody thought could happen. After their defeat to Wales, Jones took responsibility for the team's poor performance again and defended his players and his role.
I apologise to all the supporters out there for our performance tonight.
It'll be very difficult to qualify now with that situation.
Yeah, well, I think all we've got to worry about is putting our best foot forward against Portugal now, mate.
Thanks so much for your time, Eddie.
Thank you.
He also reinforced his commitment to the project after speculations about his future and rumored talks with the Japanese Rugby Union. "I came back to Australia trying to help," Jones said. "At the moment I am not giving much help, am I? But that doesn't mean my commitment to helping has changed." While these speculations may or may not be true, Jones is well aware that the Australian Rugby Union will evaluate his continuity at the end of the tournament. Even though their early exit of the World Cup is now expected, we first have to see how things unfold. You are not out until you are, so up until that point comes, Australia will still have its chances, even if they don't depend on themselves anymore. It is hard to say what will happen in the future with Eddie Jones and the Wallabies. If this was a normal situation, one would definitely expect him to leave his charge after the tournament. But it's not just as easy as that. He's been called to carry out a project, seeking to put Australian rugby back to where it belongs. However, there are still other issues to be addressed. Most importantly, the poor management of the Australian Rugby Union, which is certainly one of the main causes of their actual disaster. Apart from improving the Wallabies, the whole system of Australian rugby needs to change, and Jones is well aware of this. Australian rugby needs a systematic overhaul. Will he be the man to do so? Will the union and Aussie supporters back him to continue on the process? Only time will tell. He surely wasn't handed an easy task to carry out and is now paying the consequences, putting the face for everyone else.